very good afternoon to all Freedom listeners, locked on, listening, viewing, wherever you are. We're always happy to have you. 1:41 is the time. I'm EK now checking in. It's another edition of Issues St. Kitts Nevis. And of course, today, the last day in February. It was such a rough weekend, I'm sure, but we'll work it out. So, folks, today we have another exciting episode for you. Most of you who have been in tune so far to Issues would know that ever so often we have the good doc dropping by to talk about the invasive alien species that we have here in St. Kitts and Nevis, and of course the campaign to identify these species and what we can do to help them in their efforts. So today is another edition of that. Hopefully you guys remembered what we have touched on so far, and we've got, I think it's two more for you today, right? Two different species today. So without further ado, we're going to bring up the good doc to make a presentation and, of course, zero in on what we will be discussing or highlighting this afternoon on Issues. Doc, welcome back. It's always a pleasure having you here.
Thank you, EK.
You bring such good vibes to the radio station. I wouldn't tell a lie. How are you doing? How was your weekend?
I'm great. Very good, thank you.
All right, great. So what are we looking at today?
All right, so today we're going to continue our discussions of different invasive alien
Can
species.
pull it a little closer to you. Just pull it to you. Just pull it.
There we
There you
go.
go.
So we're going to continue our discussions of different invasive alien species affecting the Federation. In December, I was here with our communications coordinator, Dr. Joya Clark, speaking about wild tamarin and coral creeper. And last month, we were here speaking about rats and mongoose with Maria Navarrete, Dr. Maria Navarrete from Ross University School of Veterinary Medicine, and Nathan Wilson from the Environmental Awareness Group. And here this month, we're talking about the Bont tick, the amblyomma tick, and the pink hibiscus mealybug. So I'll be speaking a bit about the Bont tick, and we have Melvin James here to speak about the mealybug.
Yes, my good friend Mr. James, who only came once and never came back to visit me. It's a good thing the doctor found you today and brought you back to freedom.
Yes, man.
Welcome back, sir. Continue.
Okay, great. Yeah. So really we just are continuing our efforts to educate the community about these different species. And I don't know if you want me to speak about Bont tick first and then have Mr. James speak, or
Sure,
if you
go right
wanted to
ahead.
ask
You already
questions.
got the mic.
Yeah, okay. So a lot of the livestock farmers would be well aware of the effects of the Bont tick, but just for some context, it was first identified in 1978, and the efforts to eradicate it were really some of the first documented invertebrate control programs that we had here in the Federation, with the mealybug coming right after. So this is stuff that's been affecting us for decades. Dr. Nisbet, who was the chief veterinary officer at the time, who now works at Ponds, he explained that the tick was it came to Antigua originally in about 1830, and then it entered the region via cattle that were being brought from Senegal. It came to Nevis first, and then naturally made its way over to here to St. Kitts. So from the data that I collected from them and from some documents and publications I found online, really by 85, it had spread to pretty much the entire Federation. The data that I found said that the ruminant population declined from 6,000, 9,000, and 7,000, speaking about cattle, sheep, and goats, in 1984, down to an estimated 400, 800, and 1,000 animals, respectively, in 1980. So it really decimated hordes of our livestock. And then really we started to make some efforts at that time, obviously, to try to halt the spread. So we really started in about the early 80s in 1983 with the Caribbean Amblyomma program, trying to eradicate them from the whole region, not just our islands. And so that's why we see the use of beta-call now a lot among the livestock farmers. That's really been the key treatment to halt the spread of this invasive alien species. Really, I would say around 1998, we had been declared provisionally tick-free. So we had really well-organized efforts with a lot of compliance from farmers. Over 810 were part of the program in the late 90s. But then about 2 years ago, I was speaking to Tracy Challenger, who was the chief veterinary officer at the time. She's now the director. And she was saying that it's still present on the islands. We have struggled to get enough beta call to keep it under control. And it's expanded to some new areas, including the Southeast Peninsula. Apparently, there was a particular animal that was full of ticks that was taken from the abattoir down to the southeast before it was properly examined. And so, while the program can be considered kind of semi-successful, it's not fully resolved, and it's something that we need to be constantly keeping on top of if we're going to keep it from hurting our livestock.
All right, pretty good. Doc, you're up.
And I mean, Mr. James can also speak to the last few years, because this was really research that we were hoping to get one of the veterinarians to speak specifically about the Bont tick. So I'm doing the best I can, but I don't know if you have any additional context over the last couple of years of how it's going.
Thanks, Kerry and Ike. Yeah, it's always good to be around. I do think about coming sharing messages, and I show that over time we can do a lot more of this kind of thing. Yeah, a few points I would add about the Bont tick. It has also been found on deers.
Yes.
There is ruminant species, and there are several deers in the southeast, and when they're captured, sometimes they have ticks. So I know that the Ministry of Environment was considering what they can do, because in truth and in fact, if you're trying to get rid of all of the ticks, you'll have to also control it on the deers, or else there would be a source of reinfestation. And the ticks are kind of versatile too. I think here and there, one or two have been found on some of the wild pigs. So, we have to be careful as the problem spreads. It's about 2 or 3 times since we've had major flares. I think the most recent one started in 2017. A lot of rain. I think we had around 2 hurricanes in the 2017, 2018. And, the place is always hot. So that was really great for the tick to multiply. In addition to that, the country did not have any betical. Sometimes as small countries purchasing, you can be disadvantaged, because we did in fact place early orders, but the suppliers were not delivering for whatever reason, and we were out of. We actually ordered betical in February. It was received in October.
Wow.
Yeah, and during that period there, local supplies ran out. There was an alternative. Farmers were less familiar with the alternative, and also seemed less willing to try it. So we went back to where we had, Kerry had quoted some figures first time around. We went back to serious losses. Not as bad as first time around, but I don't remember the exact numbers of animals that we lost, but government sought to ease the burden on the farmers and paid out, I think, between $300,000 to $400,000 as a way of saying, I sympathize with you, use this money to purchase new replacement animals and that kind of stuff. One of the things that we perhaps could bear in mind too is that St. Kitts is more severely affected than Nevis, because the Nevis cattle, they're tougher. Most of them have African origin in them, and the tick is from those parts, and so those animals have a kind of resistance, immunity in them. Our animals here in St. Kitts, cattle in particular, were more from the English kind of setting. They were milk animals from the Holstein breed, which are more susceptible, so that it's easier for the Holstein animal to be seriously affected than, let's say, the Brahman or the Angus, which were beef cattle. So because Nevis have those types, they had less issues than we have. But I would say, though, overall, I will encourage persons to try and not let the tick population get too high, because what really happens is that, one, the animals, if it's really severe, they could die. And even if it's not that severe, the skin is really messed up, so it's unsightly, you can't use it for food and that kind of stuff. So that's an example of an invasive that really impacts us heavily. So just a few things there to add to Kerry. I thought she did a reasonably good job.
Amen.
And
there you go, Doc.
Considering I'm not a veterinarian. I also wanted to point out, I'm glad you highlighted the deer because I have seen quite a few photos when deer have been hit by cars or found, and they'll be fairly tick-free except for all around their neck because that's where they're not able to bite them off.
Right.
So they can't reach this part
The
of their
neck.
body, so they'll have what looks like this thick necklace of ticks around their neck. It's really horrible.
Wow.
well, they're smart, you know. They know where to go. They go to the soft spots. They might go in between the hooves and places, you know, the groin and stuff, areas
Right.
like that. They have their senses.
All right. Okay,
Yeah.
so what about the mealy bug then, Mr. James?
Yes. I'll put it this way. Most of the plants and the animals around us were really introduced at the time of occupation or discovery, whatever you want to call it, when
Colonization, my lord.
Columbus and those guys came here.
And we had
Even
the major invasive species.
right? Because, I mean, the records tell us that the countries were really forested right down to the shores. So when you look around, almost everything that you see was really brought here, right? Of course, some things came deliberately for food, the coconut, the mango, ornamentals. We know the monkeys were brought deliberately, so were the mangoes. But some things came by accident. For example, guinea grass. There was a time we didn't have one blade of guinea grass here, but as you brought in plants with soil, they had guinea grass seeds in them and so on. The rats, the ticks, we just mentioned the tick. The pink hibiscus mealybug was also one of those things that came in by accident. Now, those non-indigenous things that become well established and cause much problems, we tend to refer to them as alien invasives. And this afternoon we focus on the pink hibiscus mealybug. The pink hibiscus mealybug is from the Indian area, around India. That's where it came from. That's where you'll find it in the natural environment, in the forest, amongst the plants and so on. But in the Caribbean, it showed up around 1994, thereabout, in Grenada. The first sighting was in Grenada. It was realized that it came to Grenada all by itself without any natural enemies. Sometimes when things move, they might have natural enemies attached to their bodies. But this one did not. These did not. And so they had no real form of control. And so the numbers just skyrocketed to the extent that many of the plant species in Grenada were damaged. Even the forests, the trees in the forest were damaged. But importantly too, and perhaps because of our closeness in the Caribbean and the trade and the movement and so on, the pink hibiscus mealybug quickly moved around the region. And within 10 years, many of the Caribbean countries had the issue. St. Kitts, we got ours maybe about a few years after. Now this mealybug is very small. It's only about 3 millimeters in length, but they produce colonies. You find like the female would lay like 600 eggs. So that and the eggs would, the whole life cycle from birth to adulthood takes about a month. So in a very short time, you could be moving from 600 to thousands. Now, the mealybug in appearance is a white mass, a kind of waxy, cottony mass. And there are several white masses. Not all of them are the pink hibiscus mealybug. We have several mealybugs in St. Kitts. We have some on papaya, we have some on pineapple. But this one likes the hibiscus. That is why you call it the hibiscus mealybug. But more importantly, if you run your hand, if you crush the colony, you get a pink substance. And that identifies it to the simple man from something else. There's some mealybugs that might be cream, but this one is reddish pink. it attacks over 200 different plants, trees, shrubs, vegetables. And what it does is that it causes the leaves to crinkle up. And in some cases and all, the leaves would fall off. And when the attack is severe, the plant is defoliated, it drops all its leaves, and it might even be forced to die. What makes it so interesting is that in our context, it took a heavy toll on the hibiscus family plants. Hibiscus itself, and a lot of us use hibiscus as ornamental. We have the white, we have the yellow, we have several colors. And it really feed a lot on them. Hotels, and so you find the hotels had to be cutting back the plants because it began to be unsightly. But for the farmer, he would challenge, because okra is a hibiscus. It's from the hibiscus family.
Oh, yeah?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Not only human beings have family, not only animals have family, but these little creatures and the plants have families too. So hibiscus, okra, sorrel, they're all in the same family. And so you find that you couldn't get any sorrel. I mean, all the sorrel were twisted and mangled and, full of hibiscus, mealybug. Same thing with the okra. And so farmers lost a lot, and the government, as they tried to clean up, it had cost the government about a small sum of, I have here, I think it's 280,000 US dollars.
That's a small sum?
That's a small sum.
Wow.
When we compare to St. Vincent, it had cost them some $3.4 million. Grenada, where it came in first, were more heavily impacted, and they had to cough up $60 million in terms of replanting, bringing in trees, compensating, and so on. Eventually got to the U.S. I mean, agriculture is serious business in the U.S. So once it gets there, they had to do all they can to control it. And the records indicate that they spent some $750 million because of the mealybug. Wow. And I am sure here in St. Kitts, our costs were a lot more, but that is just the period, 2 years, where we were trying to quantify it. But if we continue even to now, because it's still here, and it's still doing damage from time to time. So we need to look into that.
So is there a safe chemical that is being used so that the plants don't get destroyed? How is it dealt with? Take me through that.
Yes. There are always chemicals. The chemical trade was big since in the early 1900s. And so there are lots of what you call systemic chemicals that can be used. But it has been found that perhaps there may be better ways, because we know now that a lot of the chemicals we used then have deleterious effects on our bodies, right? You find a lot of cancers and those kind of issues. Perhaps a better option is biocontrol. When I began, I said it did not come with any natural enemies. Really and truly, we are all a part of a food chain. Well, they say we're at the top of the ladder, so maybe we're not. But I know if we go in the wild, we could be hunted, right? So there is something that eats everything. Well, what I mean is that any species you could think about, any animal species, there's something that feeds on it. So there's stuff that feeds on the mealybug. There's something you call a ladybird. Ladybirds will eat mealybugs. So one of the things you can do is look around to see if there are mealybugs feeding on the hibiscus mealybug, right? So if there are ladybirds feeding on the mealybug. And they also sell these things. So if we don't have any here, the labs that produce ladybirds, where you can purchase them, bring them in the country, and you release them, and they would feed on the mealybug. Additionally, there are little wasp, jack spanner type of things, shaped like jack spanner, that what they do, they will lay their eggs inside the mealybug. At the base of the wasp, they have like a stinger, but they don't sting people with it. They use that stinger to pierce into the mealybug, and they will put their eggs into the mealybug. The egg will stay in there, it will hatch into a larva, and it will develop, eventually developing into a wasp. And that wasp finds itself trapped inside the mealybug. To survive, it has to come out. So it eats its way out. And in eating its way out, it destroys the mealybug. So that is the method that CARICOM went for, using what you call natural biocontrol. Fortunately, therefore, for us today, we still have some of the ladybirds and some of the wasps living in the environment.
And how has that affected us? Because we're talking about invasive species. Have you introduced a new species? It comes any casualties? The ladybird and the
a lot of these
wasp.
things have been studied over and over.
Okay.
And you tend to use things, especially which are very specific feeders, meaning that they feed on the pink hibiscus mealybug, and they have little or no interest in nothing else, so that it is difficult for them to become a problem for you later on. In fact, if there's not enough mealybugs, they tend to die off.
Okay.
And then here what happens? As they die, the few mealybugs that are left, the population gets big. When the population gets big, the few parasitoids that are left start multiplying more. So that there is a seesaw relationship up and down, but it keeps both of them at such a level that they never escalate too high to cause a problem.
Balance out itself.
It balances out itself. So that is how that is being looked at in St. Kitts and in the Caribbean. They're there, but it is unlikely that the mealybug is going to really cause a big problem again, because we have these natural enemies that will keep them in check. And should the population go down, we can import more. Let me just say one or two quick other things for that I don't. Now, as a country, right, these things, as you realize, the more invasives you have, the greater the cost of producing a crop. Let's switch a bit. For example, coconuts. We got an invasive in coconut which caused all the coconuts to die, which is called lethal yellowing. So, hence the reason for having people at the port to check your luggage when they come in. It ain't just that they're fast and they want to know if you bring a stereo, but sometimes they also need to know if you have plants. Because plants, there's certain countries we shouldn't take plants from, or not having them in the right conditions. Because certain countries have problems that we don't have. And if you, you can just bring in something, and then when you look, you're bringing in a new problem. For example, citrus. I understand that some folks brought in some citrus, and they had symptoms of problems that we do not have in this country. So what really should happen is that if you bring in a plant, the quarantine people should check it. And if it does not look wholesome, they should be given the opportunity to either clean it up or destroy it. Because the cheapest way to keep down a new disease is as soon as it comes in. If you allow it to spread all over the country, then it's going to be a big problem. So when we travel, let us understand that the present invasives that we have, we can get a lot more if we're not exercising due diligence. Having said that, we must also admit that some things everything doesn't come through the port. Some things can fly in, some things can come in by accident. You can bring in a container, and at the bottom of the container there's some giant African snails stuck on there. You're not willful, but they're just there.
Did anybody see the video from Reggae Beach over the weekend of the iguana?
Yes.
Yeah.
We see that they come in every now and again. We also get corn snakes.
Right.
So the best thing to do is to deal with them right away. If you let them multiply and so on, you could have problems.
Yeah.
EK, thank you.
I wanted to say, too, that the pink hibiscus mealybug is really kind of considered one of our major success stories, per what Mr. James was just explaining.
Okay.
And we got a lot of assistance from the U.S., from APHIS, the and Plant Health Inspection Service. So we release thousands of beetles actually to help us contain the mealy bug. And part of highlighting it this month is to show some of the successes that we've had, but also to describe what it is, because as it goes down, less persons are going to be aware of it. So now you can tell if you have this white substance and you touch it and you have a pinkish reddish stuff on your hand. It's important for us to let people know about it, and that we can maybe try to get ahead of any of these spikes that we might see. So it's just part of letting people know different things that can affect their plants, even if it's just your backyard or your crops, and to know that you can contact the Ministry of Environment if you're starting to see some of these issues and help us keep track of things. Okay. Kind of a citizen science sort of
there
thing.
You go.
Right.
Well, apart from the destruction of the plants and ultimately we lose food, are any of these two species directly harmful to the human population in terms of spread of diseases or any allergies or that kind of thing?
I don't think so. Is there something that could happen if you eat meat from an animal that was affected by the amblyomma tick?
Some, I don't remember clearly with the amblyomma, but some ticks spread a disease you call heart water. I don't believe it's the amblyomma, but some of the ticks do can cause concerns to human beings. But with the pink hibiscus mealybug, no. In fact, a lot of children have eaten them because
what?
The mealybug?
The mealybugs, yeah. When you sometimes when you pick a star thing, a 5-finger,
right?
There's some little whitey stuff right there by the stem. Right, if you don't try it away, then that's the
one goes you out.
Some extra protein.
Yeah. They don't, I mean, they really don't harm us. There's no known harm. It's just that they affect the plants. And just to say how they move around, they're very slow movers. I mean, they're real small. I said they're just 3 millimeters. So for a mealybug to move from here to, let's say, 10 feet, it will take them so long. But guess what? As they feed, they are not very efficient feeders. Much of the saliva as they bite, much of the saliva falls out. And sometimes you see this very sticky thing on the plants or on the fruits, right? The fruits get very sticky. Now, that is called honeydew. What happens is that ants like to feed on that honeydew. So the ants will come and take the honeydew. And the mealybugs are smart. While the ants there licking up the honeydew, they climb onto the ants. And so when the ants go back to its nest 20 feet away, the mealybug is there with it. And that is how it's able to move from here 20 feet away.
And get a little protection too,
Yeah,
because if you see a tree with the ants, you ain't going to try to mess with that.
Yeah, you take a ride and it goes over there.
Right.
That's how they get around. But as not all of the pests that we have are invasive. For example, we have lots of issues with worms in mangoes. But those worms come from a fly, like a housefly. But houseflies are black. The wings are black. These flies, their wings are yellowish brown, and the eyes are bluish, kind of like Kerry's clothing there. Okay. Right? But they are indigenous. They belong here. That's why they call the West Indian fruit fly, right? They were here from creation. Even when you go in the forest, even now, it's difficult to know what they feed on in the forest. But they have been surviving all those years. But see what? When we brought plants that don't belong here, like mangoes came from India. So they found mangoes to be a good source. They start feeding on mangoes. And so they affect the mangoes. You get the worms in the mangoes. But the fly itself is local. But the mango became a host, and it feed on it. So that is
eat the mango. So that's how we come into contact with
that. There you go.
Pretty good information here. Good stuff, man. Well, guys, I want to thank you guys for this information that we got here this afternoon. As always, when you guys come here, you stump me because I see these things but have absolutely no idea behind them. So we do appreciate your work. We do appreciate what you do. And, of course, we are here to assist and to help.
Well, you're not alone. Yeah. So this
speaking
is
of assistance, the project has enlisted the assistance of some ambassadors to help spread the message and to reach as much people as possible with this information in order to help you with your effort to detect, identify, and possibly get under control.
Right.
All right. So we've got one ambassador on the line so far. So we're going to say hi and hello. Welcome, Mimi.
Hi.
Yeah, we have you there waiting so long. We hope you learned something in the meantime, though.
I did learn a lot. And I think programs like this are very important. And that's why I was really excited when John James reached out to me and Dr. Joy reached out to me because, again, these are species that we live with, but we know nothing about. And I think it's very important for us to know and be able to identify and be able to deal with the problems. Again, as the farmer of a daughter of Mr. Armstrong, I know a bit more about the invasive species and some of the problems that people, particularly in agriculture, face because of them. And I know sometimes the general public could be a little bit insensitive or just not aware, again, because they just don't know. So I think, again, programs like this are really, really important. So I'm glad to be a part of it.
All right. So until we get Mr. Infamous on the line, who's also one of our ambassadors, I could also introduce myself as one of the ambassadors who will be assisting in this project. It's always a joy for me to be a part of things like these. You know, I learn a lot. It's more information for, when I have my interactions out there in the general public. And, of course, my social media platform is very vast. So if I can use my social media platform as well to inform people and educate people and get everybody on board with this, then it's always my pleasure. And, of course, I get to meet great people like the good Doc. I've never, ever met you before today. And I'm so pleased to have met you and interacted with you on this, and hopefully we can do some more work together a little closer, whether we'll probably go out in the field. You were supposed to come out in the field and now, Mr. James, and I'll know you can't come for me. Doc, don't fall in the same pattern.
Don't worry. We could go visit Mr. Armstrong's farm, I hope, Mimi.
Oh, yes, definitely. My dad would really love that.
Oh, yeah.
I've been working with him for a long time with the monkey problem. So just talking with him about the issues that he faces up there. He has such a large piece of land that it's not an easy space to control.
Wow.
Yeah, it's not like you can see them on the other side and chase them off. It's a very large property.
All right, so we've got our other ambassador on the line now, finally, Mr. Benjamin.
Hey, good afternoon, Ike. How are you?
I am well, sir. Welcome.
It's amazing.
Mm-hmm. I told you it was easy, it's just technology, my lord. Too easy. So, give us your introduction, man. Come on, make a good one here now.
Well, I am going to tell you this much. I am Kelvin Infamous Benjamin hailing from Keon, and I will be a part of the movement to raise awareness about invasive species here on the island for the next 6 months.
6 months. That's how long we get to work together.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
All right. And, of course, we want to include the general public in what we're doing. So we are organizing some, little incentives. Doc, you want to talk about that?
To be honest, I can't give you too much context right now. I didn't come prepared for that, but I know that we're going to be doing some various competitions for posters. So we're going to have some poster design competitions with 100 EC prizes that you all will be sharing on your platforms, as well as we'll share on the Department of Environment's Facebook page and Instagram page. I know we're planning to do lots of site visits and to try to get students on board. As we know, with issues like this, the younger that the younger the students are, the more it just becomes kind of ingrained and normal in their lives. So we're trying to keep this at the forefront of their minds, to keep aware of what's around them, but then to also help prevent further introductions of IAS. So yeah, we're planning to use you guys as many ways as we can within reason. We won't take advantage. We have a jingle that's going to be coming out. We're going to be doing a billboard, just to try again to make invasive species more of a kind of a household term and make people aware.
All right. Infamous, you were saying something?
Yeah, and I'll be in all the schools. So I want the people them to know. I will be in all the schools. As long as the IAS team is moving, I will be on the move with the team, because we know about you. but love the environment, but
You check.
I
You
love
didn't
it.
see that one coming. There you go.
I know.
And also as part of our efforts to we'll be having giveaways, $100 per week on each social media ambassador platform. We'll be having question and answer, and of course, when you answer your question, you have to hashtag detect, declare, protect.
Excellent.
All right.
Right.
So
and they already know that they could go to all my social media pages, Infamous Music, and across all networks. That's the only name that I have actually.
Infamous. You type it in when you find it.
Okay.
Maybe long time may see on social media.
Facebook.
I'm here
And
still.
you'll
I'm just,
find it.
I'm on the lock and key, but I'm still here. But you can follow
Story
me on
this.
Nakila Armstrong on Instagram and Mimi Armstrong on Facebook. I have a pretty good following, so I'm hoping that lots of people participate. Again, it's great information and, of course, a great incentive. Like, who doesn't want to win $100?
Well, how do you spell Makila for those listening?
It's Makeila.
Great.
But if you do type in Mimi Armstrong, you'll find it as well.
All
Okay,
right,
great.
good sound. And of course, everybody knows Real Right, EK, Future E. You know, you'll find me. I'm always on social
There's only
media.
one EK.
Exactly, it's causing all kind of problems. So I'm not hard to find at all. And hopefully, this is going to be some great fun. And, you know, we get to interact with the general public on a different level, you know, than where we're accustomed to. Because, you know, Infamous has his music, I'm entertainment and politics and talk shows. And, of course, Mimi's beauty and pizzazz and fashion.
Knowledge about agriculture.
And also hard work.
Yeah.
I was coming to that, channel friend, and hard work. And
I
of
was on
course,
that.
I had no idea that Farmer Armstrong was your dad, so I learned something
Yes,
new today.
just
So
like
you's
the
a farm
man.
girl. Okay, me family.
Yes, he can. She does be on the farm.
What
Yes.
certain things I saw, and I'm like, God, she come up a little rough. You know, no, he's a farm girl. Look at me family. I appreciate you even more. All right. So, guys, thanks again for dropping by and to let the general public know what we're going to be doing over the next 6 months. All this work that we got to do. I'm excited about it. I'm excited to work with you guys. I am ready to go. Long time being on school, so going back into the schools will be, you know, a new thing for me. So I'm geared up and prepared for that. And of course, as always, Doc, it's good to see you, Mr.
Thank
James.
you.
Please don't be a
Thank
stranger no more. And next month is our next visit, right?
Yes, we'll be
All
here
right.
next month.
All right,
Looking
so-
forward.
And guys, all right. So thanks again, guys. Have yourself a great day. And we will see you on the other side. And of course, look out for the social media platforms from all three ambassadors to see what we will be rolling out with for the next 6 months. All right?
Yes, thanks for having me.
Indeed. All right. So that's going to do it for this segment of Issues for today. We thank you guys for joining us, man. It's always a pleasure. Stay with folks. Stay with us. We'll take a short break and come back. All right, folks, we forgot